In this video, I'm going to talk about my story and how I beat sugar and how you can hopefully learn from it and break your own patterns and programming and addictions or compulsions with sugar. Now, I was addicted to sugar, and I can say that openly. I don't know that every single person has that same addictive programming. I do see that addiction piece on a sliding scale, though. So there are times in our lives, at least this was the case for me, when I felt more compulsion to want to eat sugar, but I didn't eat as much. And then there's other times when life felt hard, or there was other emotional things, or stressful work environment, or whatever was going on at the time that really brought that compulsion into more addictive behaviors. For me, it started quite young. As little as I can remember, I wanted apple juice. And I don't know this for sure. I'll have to confirm with my mom, but I think one of my first words was juice because I loved the sweetness of it. And this just progressively grew as I got older. I didn't want vegetables. I wanted sweet things. I loved candy. I loved the icing on the cake more than the cake. My very first job was at a Dairy Queen ice cream parlor, and I enjoyed so much of those treats on the regular. And I can see back then, even there was sneaking, lying, secretiveness about how much I had eaten. And when I say lying and secretive and sneakiness, this is really important because these are elements of our addictive behavior with a substance. So we don't want other people to know how much we're consuming. Now, I am talking about sugar, and I want to recognize something. When we eat carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates like chips and bread or pasta, these things turn into sugar inside our body. It's also in the category of having soda or pop or whatever you want to call it. So sweet drinks, these all have things in there that are teaching our body to have a regular connection with sugar. One memory that comes to mind for me is being a teenager. And I was visiting a friend's house, and they had this really large bag of barbecue potato chips. And we were sitting at the table and just talking and having a good time. And the potato chips were sitting there, and I just kept eating them and eating them and eating them. And I had eaten almost the entire bag. And later in the day, that friend's parent kind of gently, uncomfortably, I'm sure, called me out for eating her whole bag of potato chips. I felt so embarrassed, and I remember it like it was yesterday because I can feel that in my body. And it was not just the embarrassment, but it was that I was unconsciously doing it, and I felt rude. I felt like I shouldn't have done that. But it was also really important because it was a first inkling of me seeing some of my behaviors with food. Let's flash forward into the teen years. I would go to get some of those Tic Tacs at the store or some gum, and I would end up eating the entire thing of Tic Tacs. So I started buying more than one package because I knew I would just eat the whole thing in a day. When I got gum, I would eat it repetitively, regularly, like till the sweetness was gone, and I put in another piece. Again, these are behaviors that I'm noticing within myself, not really knowing at the time what to do about them, but I definitely had an awareness that I was doing that. There was another time when my grandmother called me out on how much Coca-Cola I was drinking, and she could see that it was a problem, and I didn't want to hear that. I think she threatened to, she came over for a family gathering, and she threatened to take all the Coca-Cola out and put it into the garage so I couldn't get it, which I can just go in the garage to get it, and I did. And she started explaining to me what Coca-Cola would do to my insides if I drank it. And this is an important point I want to make to everyone, because we try to convince ourselves, or maybe another person in our life, what this is doing to our body. But when we have a compulsion with food or with something like sugar, which can be very addictive to the physical body and our physiology, it doesn't matter how many facts we have or how much we try to convince ourselves around what it's doing to us. It's not going to make a difference. We have to come about it and come to it in a different way. I'm going to take a sidestep for a minute to prove this point to you. let's flash forward many years later. I'm now a holistic practitioner and a life coach, and I'm working with people on the regular. And I get a phone call from somebody, and this woman had stage 4 cancer. And she was crying and really upset on the phone. And she was telling me that she needed my help and that she was drinking maple syrup every single day and that her sugar addiction was out of control and she knew it was going to kill her, these were her words, if she didn't do something about it. Now, I have to be upfront with you. I did everything I could to help that woman on that phone conversation. And she, at the end of the day, wasn't willing. She was someone who was so in her pain and not ready to make a change, at least not with me. And that's okay. But she was a huge catalyst for me in starting this work about sharing my own story, because I could feel her pain. And I could also see that someone could be faced with such stark circumstances of stage 4 cancer and know that that sugar is feeding the cancer, because it is, and still be so stuck in her addiction that she couldn't do much about it. I ate whole bags of candy. I was the person who would sneak and eat like the whole bag of the cookies. And I can tell you an experience that I had that was really the beginning of what we might call a rock bottom experience. And for me, I had many of them. Some were in regards to drinking soda, and so much of it that I realized I needed to stop drinking soda completely, and I did. And then there was another rock bottom around compulsions with fast food and hiding the wrappers and the gas station food I would buy, and making sure people didn't really know how much of that I was consuming. And I was an entrepreneur at the time. I had an office that I would go to, and I would leave and go get food, and I'd have too much, and so I didn't want people to see that, so I'd throw it away in another trash can. These were some of the things that I did, and I'm sharing with you kind of vulnerably, but I share with you because I find that if we can qualify our situation to another person, that it's very helpful for them to see themselves. And these were all really important moments for me to be able to look at. Even though I wasn't necessarily making profound change at the time, I was starting to have these moments where I could see my biggest problems. And one of the big ones for me was that I ended up becoming hospitalized because of a migraine headache. Now, I had been getting migraine headaches for many, many years, and that might be a whole other video because there's a lot of reasons why those migraine headaches were consistently showing up for me. One of the big things to share today is that sugar is an inflammatory tool. It creates a lot of inflammation in our body. And so the more we have of it, the more aches and pains and inflammation we have. I started to learn very slowly, I might add, that there was a connection between how much sugar and crap food I was eating and how bad I was feeling in my body. And I knew that day that I got hospitalized and needed to be put on an IV for these headaches, I remembered what I had eaten for the 48 to 72 hours prior, and I knew it was one of the biggest reasons why I was there. There was this one time when I had Oreo cookies in the house, and I had been abstaining from sugar for a little while at this point. And I don't remember how the Oreo cookies got there. I might have had them for a party we had been hosting at the time, or I might have just bought them for me. I don't know. But I do remember I ate some. I ate quite a few. Well, I don't know exactly, but more than a handful. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to eat any more of those. I've had my fill. But I kept thinking about the cookies, kept thinking about them. I'm trying to go about my day, and all I can think about is this crack, so to speak, these Oreo cookies. And so I decide in my brain somewhere that if the cookies are not here anymore, then I can stop my obsessive compulsive thinking about the cookies. And it's a very important point because sometimes we want to make this about the food itself or the substance itself. And it is to some extent, but it's really mostly, and hear me on this, about our compulsive thinking about the thing and the numbing of the emotions that we don't want to experience in that moment. And so what I had decided is if I just ate the entire bag of Oreo cookies and got them gone out of the way, which I'd done stuff like that before, then I wouldn't have to think about it anymore. And it dawned on me that I should do that. And then I realized, I've done this before. I've eaten the whole bag of cookies and look where it's got me, right back in the same old pattern. So I decided I'm going to throw the cookies away, and I did. Now, flash forward to a few hours later, when every time I walk by the trash can, I'm not proud of this, I think about them, and I took some out of the trash can. Yes, I ate cookies out of the trash. Again, sharing this publicly on YouTube for you all, but it's really for me because I needed to have that. It's a very slice of humble pie right there, right? It's a very stark moment when you realize you're eating out of the trash. I had to take that in after. So after I did that, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of humiliation. No one knew, but you feel this with yourself. So I decided, in order to not continue this, that I would go get nail polish remover and I would pour it on the cookies in the trash, because I knew I have some boundaries at this point and standards that I am not going to eat cookies with nail polish remover on them. And so that solves that problem. But when I did that, I also knew I definitely had a problem. So some of the things I want to just hit on again. So there's certain symptoms that we see. Hiding. I would hide in the pantry and eat a bunch of chocolate covered almonds when no one could see me. And then I'd bring them out and serve them to everyone. It's like, here you go. But they didn't know I was in there. I didn't think they knew. And I was like eating a whole bunch before I even served them. So there's these secretive pieces here when it comes to food or sugar that we want to watch out for. These are just signaling to us that we have a compulsion or an addiction with it. The other thing that I want to mention that I think I hit on, but it seems to be one of the most important things. This is about the sugar and the food, but it's not really about the sugar and the food. It's about the behavior that you have, that I had, of reaching outside ourselves for something to make us feel better. So if we took away that certain food or that certain sugary treat or the beverage that we've been using, diet sodas are a big example of this for a lot of people, or regular sodas. If we take that away, we still are left with the behavior and the compulsion and the thinking and the aspect of us that has been using that thing to suppress or to numb or to ignore a whole emotional self that is going on inside of us. And I had tried so many times in my life to stop these behaviors, and they're progressive. When we have addictive or compulsive behaviors with something like food or sugar or other substances for that matter, they don't get better if we don't get help. They always will get worse. And why? Is because it's left untreated and we're ignoring a problem that's truly coming up for our highest self, for our awakening, so to speak. We are trying to heal and become whole and connected in our body. And we are in this place where we are closing off our emotional self. And when we close off our emotional self, we're also suppressing our immune system. And then sugar also suppresses our immune system. So we have this digestive issue happening simultaneously because our immune system lives in our digestive system. And remember, this is a holistic system we have going on here. When you suppress your immune system, you suppress your digestive system. When you suppress your emotional system, you suppress your immune system, your digestive system. It impacts your nervous system. It's all connected. So the approach that I took that has worked for me and worked for so many of my clients is that we approach this from a physical and the physiological aspect of ourselves. That's one piece. And then we also approach it from a spiritual, emotional, and mental piece. So we need to manage these 4 aspects of ourself. And when I say manage, we need to be in relationship to these aspects to ourselves in a different way than we have before. The behaviors and the patterns and the programming that have got us here, we think it's willpower. That's what I thought. I just need some more willpower. I just need to try harder. And this really actually isn't about our willpower. This isn't about trying harder. It's about accepting that what you've done so far has not worked and that there's got to be a different way. And the different way invites you into needing to face some of those fears around change and perhaps looking at your relationship to your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual self completely different. So let's start with the physical self. For me, the physical was about looking at healing my gut. If our gut is unhealthy, we're going to crave sugar like crazy. The other piece, and again, these were long-term goals here. This doesn't just happen quickly, but I want to give you the pieces so you can have a direction. The other piece for me was my adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are likely needing a lot of support if you're really craving sugar or your sleep has been erratic. Your hormones is another piece. Working on balancing your cortisol levels is another piece. And then another big part of the physical aspect is how you're moving your body and your relationship to moving your body. Finally, sugar, food, too much in our gut that is processed and packaged, this is suppressing our immune system. And so while we're doing all these things, we want to be in full-on support of boosting our immune system. Next, I'm going to talk about the emotional relationship with yourself and how imperative this is to look at, and how with my story, it was one of the biggest pieces. Now, like I said, when our immune system is suppressed or our nervous system is dysregulated, so will our emotions. Our emotions will be suppressed, our emotions will be dysregulated. And so this is the inner work. This is this inner journey where we courageously, and I say courageously because it is. This is not the stuff we want to do. No one's like, oh my God, I want to do emotional healing work. Woohoo. It's something that we have been avoiding. And we've been using sugar or food as a way to cope and as a way of not looking at some of these deep hidden things. So this is going inward, and it's courageously choosing to open your heart and reconnect with your body and some of the things that we've been shoving down, some of the fears, some of the patterns, some of the old belief systems. This was a big piece that led me into learning about somatic therapy, and it's become a very pivotal aspect of how I work with my clients. And so that came from me working with myself. It introduced me to understanding trauma and how trauma lives in the body. And a lot of people say, well, not everyone has trauma. And I disagree with that. I think everyone has a little bit of trauma. Now, again, trauma is on a huge spectrum, enormous. So we're not comparing our trauma to somebody else's trauma and saying, well, theirs is worse, so mine must not be here. Sometimes trauma can be caused from like long-standing repetitive issues in our life, and we have no idea that it's even there, but it's just programmed us so much that we have created these coping strategies, in this case eating too much or addictions with sugar or processed foods or soda or whatever it is. These have become our coping strategies in order to not have to feel the effects of that trauma. One of the biggest hallmarks of trauma is that we leave our body. We literally become disconnected and leave our body and feel separate from our body. And the irony here is that our body holds a lot of wisdom. And within the wisdom of the body is our healing. So our body is likely having a lot of issues going on if we have an addiction to sugar. And it's basically screaming at you, your physical body, saying, pay attention. There's things that you need to address. And those things that you need to address are the emotional, suppressed, or traumatic memories that are happening inside your body still. For me, there was a lot of courage involved in doing this work, but it also included honoring that I didn't realize, but my body didn't actually feel very safe. I didn't feel safe in my body. I didn't feel connected to my body, and I didn't know how to be alone with myself and really how to relax into my system and be at ease in my nervous system. And I was using food or sugar to try to escape because it felt so scary to be alone with myself. So one of the things to just acknowledge, if you're watching this right now and this is something you relate to, is that you can feel safe in your body as you go through the uncomfortable changes that are happening for you or that are going to be happening, because this involves change. It involves inviting in, I need to change my life because this isn't working for me anymore. And that was a big thing for me. I knew that I couldn't do it like this anymore. I hit a bottom. I had to make a change. And that leads me to the next piece, is our relationship with our mental health, and primarily our thinking. We're changing our thoughts, we're changing our mind, we're changing the inner dialogue that's happening. And this is also becoming super aware of the inner critic. And that part of us that has a constant dialogue of shaming or blaming or guilting or worrying or sitting in the fear. Everyone's different, but we have to change our thinking and change our mind if we are to come at this from all sides. All four quadrants have to be a big part of this. Otherwise, we get lost in the loop of our thinking and resentments that we're holding from the past, or any old fears that are coming up and poking at us or pushing our buttons. And then what's the thing that happens is we just get right back into the addiction cycle, which I explain in the video prior to this. So make sure you check that out if you haven't seen it. We get right back into the addiction cycle where our cortisol, our stress hormones, are more pronounced. And so we have learned to associate, I feel better when I have food. Food has become the safety. And so we search for the food or the sugary treat again, and then we get right back into the cycle. So part of this process is doing the emotional work so we can feel safe here and reconnected with our body. And then changing our mind, changing our thinking so we can tell ourselves, I am safe while I'm going through this change and while I'm uncomfortable. Because let's face it, when you go through withdrawal from overeating or sugar or whatever it is that you're having, artificial sweetener withdrawal, it's uncomfortable. And so we learn to take some inventory, if you will, of these old beliefs and these old patterns and really see the programming. I think that's the biggest thing I want to convey here with the mental and the thinking piece, is that we have a program that's been running the show in our mind. And we have a lower self and our middle self and our higher self. And the lower self is a lot of this programming. The middle self is the logical one. The logical part of ourselves is always saying, well, I can solve this problem. I can figure this out. I can do this myself. And no, this is when we have to invite in our higher self. And that brings me to the spiritual component of breaking your addiction with sugar. So from a spiritual perspective, this isn't about my spirituality. This isn't about even what you call it. You can call it God or source or energy or universe or Jesus or whatever it is you want to call that. It doesn't even matter. But it is about understanding something, that you have not been able to break the pattern yourself so far. And that's okay. You're not supposed to be able to do this yourself. That's the reason why it's a compulsion and an addiction. It's an obsessive behavior, so to speak, with food. And that we come to realize that we can't do it ourselves, and that the only thing we can do is to surrender to the change, surrender to a spiritual experience. We can't do that surrender initially. We kind of have to hit the bottom and realize that we have a problem and realize that we can't do it ourselves. And then we start eventually learning to surrender and saying, there's got to be another way and I don't know it, but I need to trust something, a higher source, a power greater than myself, something, the universe, other people who've done this before me. But I need to trust that to guide me because I know I can't do this alone. The beautiful thing of all this is that our spiritual connection happens through our body. So our physical body is this conduit. When we are connected and reconnected with our physical body and our emotional self, and we are paying attention to our thoughts, our spiritual self is woven through this vessel of ours. It's woven through our body. It is going to guide us and lead us to tools, to people, to experiences, to the right thinking, to any books, material, whatever it is that is going to guide us to take the next right action. I saw this quote one time, and it said that the body speaks for the soul, because the soul doesn't have a voice otherwise. And if you think about it, if your body is screaming at you with aches and pains or issues that you've been dealing with for so long, and I'm talking about long-standing issues, it is that your body is being used by your soul to show you the way. It's trying to show you the way. And your point right now that you're at when you are in this place in your addiction recovery is to say, okay, I need to recover my soul. I need to do the inner work on my soul so that way I can heal my body. Finally, as I said at the beginning, your digestive health is deeply connected to every aspect of your health, emotional health, mental, spiritual health, and it's greatly impacted by the food that we eat. So one of the most important things that I noticed in my story is that I had a lot of constipation issues. I had a lot of digestive issues. I had candida issues, thyroid, adrenal. I developed autoimmune issues. I also had a lot of the things that I talked about with migraines and inflammatory aches and pains, and I could go on there. But what I want to do is I want to guide you to check out part 3 of this video. And I'm going to go deeper into the digestive aspect of this and take you a little bit more into the physical aspect of the body. And then there's 6 videos in this series. So I do hope you check all of them out and you get tons of value from this. And make sure you check out the link that I have below on what to eat and what not to eat, and part 1 of this video series, so you can get a really good picture of how to start your detoxification process and your beginning steps for breaking your relationship and changing it with sugar for the good. Thank you so much. Thanks for hearing my story. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Totally helps me in the algorithms when you do that. And you're not alone. And this is such a big topic. So if you related to this or you have an experience that you want to share about your story, please put it in the comments below so we can stay connected. And be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can be the first to hear when our new videos come out every single week. Take care.